Oh, I'm sorry. You thought the SHP phenomenon was done? You thought there was no more theories for it? You thought I wasn't going to find a way to geniusly devise a plot to have every single Silent Hill combined? Even though I just got done saying in my last video that none of them are connected, I think I may have found a way, and this is so crackpot it just might work. Now bear in mind, this is based on the idea that every single person and every single writer was in cahoots with each other to make this plot work out. But if it is the case, and this is a big if, I think I may have found out a reason why the new Silent Hills look the way they do, and why every single Silent Hill actually works out in the end plot-wise. You're gonna need to sit down for this one. What's happening, folks? Big Iron Riot here, where I supply you with all the best and greatest theories, suppositions, reports, video essays, and everything else in between about the world of Silent Hill. And some other stuff. Don't forget about the other stuff, that's important. Because, man, the viewership on me talking about Bioshock is just... You know, while we were doing the Walter Sullivan villain ranking video, there was something that I noticed as well as my wife, and we started putting our brains together about it. And things started, you know how it goes once you go down that rabbit trail. It starts connecting to things that it shouldn't, and then all of a sudden it does work, and you're like, oh wait, hang on a second. So that's what we ended up doing here. I have a thought. You see, despite what fans thought, in the game Silent Hill, the short message, you're treated to a wonderful note or Easter egg, however you want to look at it. Upon a few bits of inspection, you'll notice that the article that you read details the effects of something called the Silent Hill phenomenon, and it just explains that you have to go through a series of duress and mental strain and emotional trauma in order to invoke a almost like Silent Hill effect in the area you're in, no matter what area you're in. And this was, including myself, this was a very, very disappointing and very lazy way to kind of just say this is why things are happening everywhere else but Silent Hill. I made a few videos on it. We kind of laughed at it. I pointed at the idea that if it were true, you'd have to do this and this and this, and we kind of just left it there. But after digging into Walter, I started to realize there was something to it. Now, bear in mind, this is, of course, a theory, so I don't want you guys going off the handle believing I'm spouting nothing but the truth. But I found a way that not only does it make it work, but it actually changes Silent Hill fundamentally to something else, and not so much the haunted town that everyone came to know and love, but more of something else entirely. I'll explain. What if the other world, Silent Hill, wasn't supposed to be limited to just Silent Hill? What if it operates more like a virus, spreading its influence far beyond the town's borders through those who have been touched by Silent Hill, or touched by the SHP? This is the question that I kind of propose here. So we're going to explore this theory, and we're going to operate as if the SHP is actually a reality-altering curse, and it makes the individuals kind of carry the other world with them. Now from there, kind of setting that frame of thought, you're going to be able to follow with me a little easier, but I'm going to explain, and it's going to make sense here when I get done. Now, whether or not you think this is reaching, or whether or not you think the writers aren't smart enough for this kind of move, or whether you think this is just a harebrained idea, like I said, let me know. I'm curious. But we're gonna kind of analyze every Silent Hill, and I'm gonna explain how this comes into play. All right, let's do this. The origin of the Silent Hill phenomenon can be traced back to the events of the first Silent Hill game, where Dahlia Gillespie, a central figure in the story, plays a pivotal role in unleashing the curse that would ultimately spread beyond the town's borders. Dahlia is a high-ranking member of the Order, a cult based in Silent Hill that worships a deity they believe will bring about paradise on Earth through rebirth. Her actions, driven by a mix of religious fervor and personal ambition, set the stage for the SHP to take root and begin its insidious spread. Dahlia's primary goal in Silent Hill is to use her daughter, Alessa Gillespie, as a vessel to birth the Order's god. Alessa possesses immense psychic power, which Dahlia seeks to harness by performing a ritual that will force the god into the world. However, this ritual does not go as planned. The immense pain and suffering inflicted upon Alessa during the ritual causes her psychic powers to spiral out of control, creating a rift between reality and the other world, a nightmarish parallel dimension that reflects the inner torment of those who enter it. The creation of the other world in Silent Hill marks a significant manifestation of the SHP. The phenomenon, initially localized to Silent Hill, alters the town's reality, transforming it into a twisted landscape where the fears, guilt, and trauma of those trapped within it come to life. The fog-covered streets, decaying buildings, the grotesque monsters that populate the town are all manifestations of SHP, born from Alessa's psychic anguish and Dahlia's manipulations. Now, Harry Mason, the protagonist of Silent Hill, is drawn into the nightmarish world after his adopted daughter Cheryl, who was revealed to be a fragment of Alessa's soul, disappears in the town. Harry's journey through Silent Hill exposes him to the full brunt of the SHP. As he searches for Cheryl, Harry encounters the town's terrifying manifestations, each one a reflection of the psychological scars left by Alessa's suffering. Harry's exposure to the SHP is critical to understanding the theory's viral nature. By entering Silent Hill and coming into contact with the other world, Harry becomes marked by the phenomenon. Although he ultimately escapes, depending on the ending of course, the SHP has left an indelible mark on him, one that may linger even after he leaves. The idea of being marked by the SHP is a central component of this theory, so you're going to hear it a lot, suggesting that once someone has been exposed to the other world, they can carry a part of it with them, potentially spreading it to new locations. Now, Dahlia Gillespie's role in the creation of SHP extends beyond just her manipulation of Alessa. Dahlia can be seen as the first agent of the SHP, deliberately using her daughter's power to kind of bring about the other world and by extension the spread of SHP. Through her actions, Dahlia not only initiates a curse within Silent Hill, but also lays the groundwork for its spread beyond the town's borders. Dahlia's manipulation of Alessa and the subsequent creation of the other world can be viewed as the first infection of the SHP. Alessa's power, corrupted by pain and suffering, becomes the carrier of the phenomenon, and Silent Hill itself the epicenter of the outbreak. However, the SHP does not remain confined to Alessa or Silent Hill. It begins to radiate outward, touching those who come into contact with the town or its inhabitants. Another crucial aspect of Dahlia's role in the SHP's spread is her involvement with the Wish House, an orphanage run by the Order. The children in the Wish House were subjected to various forms of psychological conditioning and ritualistic abuse, similar to what Alessa experienced. Dahlia and the Order use these children as pawns in their quest to spread the influence of their god and the underworld. By manipulating these vulnerable children, Dahlia effectively planted the seeds of the SHP in their minds, ensuring that the phenomenon would continue to spread even after her death. The Wish House can be seen as a breeding ground for future agents of the SHP. The children who survived the ordeals at the orphanage were likely marked by the phenomenon, carrying it with them as they grew up and moved to different places. The deliberate conditioning of the children to spread the SHP is a key element of the theory, highlighting how the Order, under Dahlia's influence, sought to extend their reach beyond Silent Hill and bring about their vision of paradise on a global scale. Yeah, I said it. Silent Hill is almost being utilized as a psychological virus, implanting all these traumatic events and stressors into a person and then kind of setting them free into the world. Sometimes they stay in Silent Hill. Other times they do not. However, one thing is for certain, the first person to realize its power and utilizing it would be Dahlia Gillespie, as the only way to kind of kickstart this thing off was to take advantage of her daughter's power. Okay? Like I said, this shit was harebrained, but I felt this was the best place to dump this idea off on. But this is just part one. Let's talk about part two. Silent Hill 2 offers a different perspective on the Silent Hill phenomenon, this time emphasizing how the phenomenon can target individuals who are not directly tied to the town's occult history. Instead, a happy couple, or seemingly happy couple. Upon their first visit to Silent Hill and Toluca Lake in that special place, they were both touched, and nothing more was done about it until the events transpired in which James had unfortunately helped his wife go to the great beyond, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, we'll start with James, the protagonist. He's drawn to Silent Hill after receiving a mysterious letter from his deceased wife. That letter, seemingly written by Mary after her death, lures James back to Silent Hill, where the SHP has already begun to take root. James' journey through the town is shaped by his deep-seated guilt and unresolved feelings regarding Mary's death. James is an example of how the SHP can target individuals through psychological vulnerabilities. Although James has no direct connection to the town's occult history, his profound guilt over his role in Mary's death marks him as a prime target for an SHP. This phenomenon manipulates James' reality, manifesting his inner demons as tangible entities in the other world. The town's foggy, decaying environment reflects James' deteriorating mental state, while the monsters he encounters, such as Pyramid Head and the Faceless Nurses, are physical representations of the guilt, sexual frustration, and desire for punishment, blah blah blah. We've said this 1,000 times over. The presence of the SHP in Silent Hill 2 is not just a random occurrence, but a deliberate manipulation of James' reality, suggesting that those who are touched by the phenomenon can experience a personalized otherworld wherever they go. This idea reinforces the notion that SHP is a viral entity capable of altering reality to match the psychological profile of its victims, whether they are in Silent Hill or elsewhere. Mary Sunderland's connection to the SHP is complex and deeply intertwined with James's experience. Despite her death, Mary's presence looms large in the events of the game. The letter that draws James to Silent Hill is a manifestation of the SHP, a product of his own psyche rather than a message from beyond the grave. This letter and the otherworldly encounters James has with the versions of Mary throughout the game are the SHP's way of confronting him with his guilt and forcing him to reckon with his actions. Mary's role in Silent Hill 2 exemplifies how the SHP can reach beyond the grave, affecting not only the living but also the memories and remnants of the deceased. The SHP uses Mary's image and voice to manipulate James, creating a distorted version of her that serves as both the tormentor and guide. Basically, the moment James and Mary went to Silent Hill to have that vacation, they were infected, for lack of a better term. Upon returning home, after the events transpired, and the good old pillow was used as weapon of choice, James' SHP had activated itself. It was based on duress and trauma, and they got it. So, in lieu of that happening, James began to see these manifestations, and it came to life. And this was, as I said in the beginning, is a prime example of what can happen outside of town, because no one really knows where he was when he got the letter from Mary. It's kind of offhandedly said, but it's not really focused on entirely. But he gets the letter and he just comes back to Silent Hill. That's the only place he knows. Why? Because that's the only place he had good memories of her, in the recent years. And so he goes back. Now, if you're wondering how Angela gets SHP, I gotta figure out a shorthand way to say that. If you're figuring out how Angela got the SHP, well, it's actually very simple. She's got family in Silent Hill. And even if the family were dead in Silent Hill, in gravestones, she was tainted the moment she stepped foot on the grounds. And because she is a walking just pile of mental stability, SHP kicked in just as well. Now, as for Eddie and Laura, since Laura may very well have been infected, which may have had her lured to town, but she was not going to see any evil manifestations or any demons or anything because, of course, she was pure. So you got kind of just Laura by herself, and she's looking around wondering what's next, and everybody else is seeing, flying winged demons and things like that. And as for Eddie, he naturally was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He committed a whole bunch of bad moves, bad ideas, things like that, and then for one reason or another, he ended up lured back to Silent Hill. He could have contracted SHP from anyone. And we'll get back to Eddie in a minute, and I'll tell you why shortly. Anyway, let's go to part 3. Okay, so Part 3 serves as a direct sequel to the first game, following the story of Heather Mason, who's revealed to be the reincarnation of Alessa Gillespie. As such, Heather's not just marked by the SHP, but a prime conduit for its power. Throughout the game, the Otherworld frequently overtakes reality, reflecting Heather's fear, anger, and remnants of Alessa's trauma. Heather's connection to the SHP is so strong that the Underworld manifests with little provocation, often without warning. This suggests that the SHP has become more potent, capable of altering reality on a larger scale and with a greater frequency. Heather's journey is not just about survival, it's about confronting the legacy of Silent Hill and the SHP that has been passed down to her from Alessa. The events of Silent Hill 3 further support that theory that the SHP can be carried beyond the borders of Silent Hill. This is actually the first time we really get a feel for it. As Heather travels, the Otherworld follows her, suggesting that she is a carrier of the SHP virus, capable of spreading its influence wherever she goes. This makes her a pivotal figure in understanding how the SHP functions and how it can be potentially infectious to new locations. You see, this is where things start to get very interesting, because you now get to see the extent of the phenomenon's power, how it affects things, where it affects things, and when it affects things. And I personally believe things start to ramp up from here, because the connections, while plot-wise, there's virtually no connection with a lot of these Silent Hills. They're all kind of offshoot storylines. But the deep-rooted layer underneath, the groundwork, and things of that sort, kind of lead up to what we're about to see in the coming Silent Hills. I find it fascinating. So if I'm right, it's especially exciting. If I'm wrong, another theory down the tube, right? Anyway, let's move on to one of my personal favorites, Silent Hill 4. Now, in Silent Hill 4 The Room, it introduces a unique perspective of the SHP through the character of Walter Sullivan. Walter, unlike previous protagonists, is not merely a victim of SHP, he actively harnesses it as a power. As a child, Walter was indoctrinated by the teachings of the Order and learned of the 21 Sacraments ritual, which he believed would reunite him with his mother, room 302 of South Ashfield Heights. It still sounds weird even as I read it. Walter's connection to the SHP is so profound that after his death he gains the ability to control his own version of the Otherworld, bending it to his will. This marks a significant evolution of the SHP, as Walter becomes the first character to not only be touched by the phenomenon, but to manipulate it with free will. And I use free will very strongly here, because if you're going to say Alessa was the first to be able to manipulate it, this was under duress, this was under the bindings of her mother, that sort of thing. Walter literally did whatever he wanted here. His Otherworld is a nightmarish realm filled with twisted representations of his fears, desires, and memories. Walter's actions in Silent Hill 4 demonstrate the SHP's ability to spread through ritualistic practices and deep-seated psychological trauma. By performing the 21 Sacraments, Walter extends the reach of the Otherworld beyond Silent Hill, creating new pockets of horror that can ensnare others. His mastery of the SHP suggests that there are those who are deeply marked that can potentially control and spread its influence, further supporting the idea that SHP functions like a virus. And before you get hung up on all the terminology and everything like that, when I say virus, I don't literally mean someone injected you with something. I mean something more metaphysical. Upon being indoctrinated into Silent Hill's cults, or touching their sacred grounds, essentially, I feel like you contract something that does not go away. It's like going into a haunted house and leaving with the ghost. Like, there's just something that follows you. So, before we get hung up on that, because I don't want to hear you guys talking about Silent Hill has an umbrella corporation now, and nothing like that. That's just silly. Anyway. Silent Hill Homecoming and Downpour, while they're not exactly the most enjoyable, I mean, some people may find it to be their favorites, whatever, I don't judge. Silent Hill Homecoming was the perfect example of just inescapable influence. No matter what, everything points back to Silent Hill. Shepherd's Glen was some place that Alex's journey had led him to, and so you had the main character inadvertently being lured back. Shepherd's Glen was closely tied to the occult of Silent Hill, so it was an easy shoe-in, kind of an easy slam dunk, a very, very lazy story, but you have the connection there. And so when Alex goes back, the first thing he does is, SHP activates itself, and he gets a taste of the reality manipulation that he is so accustomed to. However, in Silent Hill Downpour, it's more along the lines of a luring effect. He just so happened to be within the area, therefore he was lured to the town. He has a lot of ghosts and demons in his closet, so Silent Hill said, well, while you're here, enjoy. Now, it should be noted that at this point in the storyline, in the timeline, the SHP aura has increased in size, and who knows just how large it had gotten and how many places it had gotten. So he had been in prison seeing visions and things like that, or his manifestations could remind him of prison and things like that as well. No one can tell just how bad the SHP has gotten. However, this is a situation where you can't exactly go on the news and say, guys, heads up, the SHP is real, there's a thing that happens to you, because it wouldn't make any sense. A bunch of people hallucinating, that can mean anything, especially with people going through trauma who don't like to talk about their trauma, or hallucinate who don't like to talk about hallucinating. So these two stories, while they were not my favorite, they still have the SHP kind of reeking on the plot line a little bit, in my opinion. But we're going to move on to the more important part of the storyline. Now, you guys are going to get really, really mad at me, but I have to do it. Let's talk about the short message. Yeah. Now, the setup for the short message is very, very simple. And it kind of keeps this theory alive. And I mentioned earlier in the video, you find a note explaining that a doctor has found various cases of people bringing out something called the SHP, or Silent Hill phenomenon, in great moments of distress and duress and all that good stuff. It's mentioned. However, this story itself, this game itself, is proof now that Silent Hill, or the SHP, has gone global. And I'm talking like 100% global saturation.
Complete global saturation.
That kind of stuff. You're now looking at a place somewhere in Europe, has nothing to do with nothing, and all of a sudden you're just getting a ass ton of just hallucinations and Silent Hill-like mechanisms going on and about with zero connection to the town whatsoever. This implies that the SHP has now become a epidemic. That's it. There's nothing else to it. At this point, writers from any Silent Hill universe can go, let's make a side story, and it would make perfect sense, because this is just another place affected by the things that go bump in the night and the SHP. That's it, really. Last but not least, we have Silent Hill Ascension. By all rights, it didn't do well. We all hated it. We didn't accept what it did. We don't like the new system, the choose your own adventure style, the microtransactions, and god-awful Gen Vid. They still have me blocked, by the way. They don't want me to talk to them. One thing, however, that did come to pass was the mention of the Withering. Now, the Withering was some global epidemic that was going on where the other world would come out to random people, and their realities would change around them in random places in the world. This is a sign that so far, Silent Hill Ascension seems to be the most recent and up-to-date in terms of timeline Silent Hills, but this also shows that during the time of Ascension, it's already the end times. Dahlia's plan has worked. In every subsequent Silent Hill after the fact, after part 1, you begin to see how well Silent Hill can expand and grow. While it has no goal, it has no sentience like a virus would, its influence is what she wanted to spread. Because the more influence you had, the more ability you had to turn each town into someone's personal hell. Or everyone's going through their own personal hell, and Silent Hill is the catalyst for it. And it could not have happened if it weren't for Alessa intertwining with Silent Hill and actually making this come to be. Because the moment Alessa was able to make her own nightmare world, that means others were able to control it as well. And Walter did rise to the occasion. He came through and he said, you know what, I'm going to make it the way I want to. And that was after he had died and offed himself. The Withering is the the end times, which is fitting because that whole series sucked. But the Withering is the end times, and the Withering is the SHP in my personal opinion. The way to combine all this together, and this is me following breadcrumbs and kind of patching things together based on what they're writing now, not what they wrote in the past. The idea is that if they do go ahead with the SHP, which Jacob Novak has mentioned himself as something that is canonical even in Silent Hill Ascension, then that means they've constructed a virus. And if they've constructed a virus, that means they've run this thing like Resident Evil. And that's awful. I don't know, what do you guys think? I just, ultimately, when it comes to chaining all these events together, if you're going to tie Silent Hills together, just give me something simple. Don't do this. Now, if I've spun myself my own web and got myself all wound up because I'm the one going, oh, I wonder if this is the case. I wonder if this is why this is happening, and my theory is what's making me overthink things. I've been told I'm an overthinker. You guys have popped up in my comments plenty of times going, you're overthinking things. Fine, maybe so. But if you're going to make the SHP a thing, this is the only way you can make it a thing. Any other means to make it a thing just would be made up, in my opinion. This is the only definitive way to have everything connect to each other. Now, here's for your next question, or here's the answer to your next question. No, I don't think they should. It's a fun little theory, and I like to go and navigate through and theorize a little bit with you guys, but by no stretch of the imagination should this happen. If this happens, it diminishes the small stories that the main characters go through and the plight of certain characters, all just so we can do a main plot line. So what, in the end, in Silent Hill 17, we can get James, Henry, and Pendleton to show up in the same game and start kicking ass Avengers Endgame style? No. I don't think this is a way to do it, personally. So I hope I'm wrong. But if you wanted a way to connect everything, there you go. Take that with what you will. In the meantime, shout out to everybody on my Patreon. I appreciate you guys. And anybody that has just popped in over the course of the last few days. My videos have been exploding. Don't know why, but I love you for it. And I'll see you guys in the next video for sure with even more crackpot theories or talks about Silent Hill. Also, if you want to see what's going on in other things other than Silent Hill, I got videos for that too. But yeah, you take a look, see what you like. Links are in the description below. And yeah, I don't want this theory to work. Like, it sounds nice, but I don't want it to work. But if it were, would you want this to work? Would this sound good to you? I don't know. Something about this just irks me. I think it's because I tied Ascension to it, and Ascension sucks.